What's going on, everybody? Blue here, bluebearsgames. This week we are delving into another Blues Budget Brews. This is my budget commander deck series. This week we're bending the budget a little bit, and we're going to go into a budget of 100. I was given a budget of 100 or $80 to $100, and we're going to delve into that real quick. So, you should recognize, if you've seen, you've seen a lot of my videos, or if you've been part of the channel for a while, you'll recognize Purphoros, God of the Forge. I have my own personal builds for this guy, and this build came about because the person who contacted me had asked specifically for what is called a red deck wins style of deck. For those not familiar with a red deck wins, it's usually a lot of low-to-the-ground creatures, very cheap cost, high power, usually hasty with burn backup for a win, and that's usually on a 60-card format. The mistake I made was originally thought that's what they were asking for because they didn't specify commander clearly. They said either or, but they apparently wanted commander, so I had built a regular 60-card red deck win style deck, and when I gave them the deck list, they were like, oh, it was supposed to be for commander. So then we had to figure out the commander. What I gave him as far as choices, they all weren't exactly what he was looking for, so then he suggested, well, why can't you make me a Purphoros? Now, in my opinion, Purphoros doesn't lead itself 100% to a red deck wins kind of theory, but I went that way with it, and we went as far as I could go with low-to-the-ground creatures, and a lot of them. You know that if you've seen my builds before, for Purphoros itself specifically, I have 2 of them up there. If you haven't seen them, go check them out. There are maybe 6 to 8 creatures. I think I had to build with 22 or 23. I don't know. I'll have the deck list up in the description so you can take a look at it. And so here's what I did. A lot of creatures that come into play and create a token somehow, some way, and then some utility stuff to go with it. And then, of course, my usual spells that create tokens, because Purphoros himself will be direct damage, a la the red deck wins theory, and the creatures are all low to the ground. Quick to cast, you're going to get a lot of swarming with some going wide ability with the tokens. So let's read what Purphoros does if you don't know. So it's 4 to cast. As a commander, that's not great. You want to usually be in the 2 to 3 range, and if they're 4 or higher, they must do something really special. This guy does. So he actually does lend himself to a red deck wins strategy. He is indestructible. That's a great thing. He's a 6/5, so good stats. Hard to remove because he's indestructible. He's an enchantment creature, so he's an enchantment unless your devotion to red is 5 or more. And what that means is that on the table, or on the battlefield, if you have 5 red total pips or more, so there's the pip, so he counts himself as 1 devotion. So if you have 4 more, he's also a creature that can now attack as well. He also has the greatest abilities for me in Commander that I've seen in, since he was incepted way back in, what the hell year was this? I don't even remember when Theros came out. But he has the ability that says whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, he deals 2 damage to each opponent. Now, entering the battlefield and casting are 2 different things, so that's where the token generation comes from. And that's why it's mostly all token generation, because you need, for 2 damage, you need 20 creatures total enter the battlefield, and you can wipe out an entire board. Table, I should say. His second ability is where the red deck wins comes in. So he has the ability for every time you pay 1 red and 2 of any, since there's a colon there, so you can do it as many times as you want as an instant. Creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn. So we're going to use both of those to help win the game. That's the theory here. That's the strategy. It's very straightforward, just like in my builds. This one's a little different because it has more creatures, but we'll go over all that. So that's Purphoros. He's a great guy. I love him as a commander. He's my favorite commander, especially when it comes to red. So let's go over the lands that I put in here. So we had a $100 budget. The problem is Purphoros eats up a little bit over 20 of that. Okay, so I had to make sacrifices in a lot of areas because now we're down to 80, and a lot of inclusions that you make a nice competitive deck, especially with Purphoros, means that you've got to make cuts somewhere. And my first option is always to cut in lands. The good thing is we're in monocolor red, so you don't need dual lands, so that's an easy cut. So we start with Castle Embereth. To go along with that, red deck wins, or what originally was known as Sly. Sly had some land destruction in it, but it was the same theory. Castle Embereth, it can come into play untapped. It counts, the amount of mountains on the battlefield, and if you control, it enters tapped unless you control at least a mountain. And you're going to have a lot of them here because it's a monocolor deck. It taps that a red, so we're good there. And then you can pay 3, so 2 red and 1, and tap it, and creatures you control get +1/+0 until end of turn, essentially doing what Purphoros does for the most part. You have to tap this to do it. With Purphoros, you can do it over and over. If there's something that says you can't activate abilities for creatures, you still have this. There wasn't much else because red doesn't have a lot of good utility lands in mono red, so I did cycling to basically in later game get the bad draws out and possibly make draws better. So we got the 3 cycling lands. Obviously, those are needed. Dwarven Mine, because it comes into play, it's a mountain itself, and it can come into play untapped if you control 3 mountains. And then when it does come into play, it creates a 1/1 token, triggering Purphoros. So that's in there. Got a couple more token generators. Foundry of the Consoles comes into play untapped, and then you can sacrifice it for tap it and sack it for 5, and you can create 2/1/1 Thopter tokens that are flying. So that also will generate 2 damage per creature for Purphoros. Spawning Bed, another version of that. This one creates 3 1/1s instead of 2, so you got 6 damage there, plus their 1/1s that can sack and add a colorless. Handware Battlements, first time I've used this in any of my deck builds. Comes into play untapped and adds a colorless. You can pay a red and tap it, and target creature can gain haste until end of turn if you need that. And then for 2 red and 3, you can tap it. And then if you both own and control Handware Battlements and a creature named Handware Garrison, you can then exile them both and turn them both over. And then this is the top half, and I'll show you the bottom half in a little bit, to make Handware Writhing Township, and I'll explain why that is in here in a little bit. Some ways to thin your deck out of land draws and get them into the battlefield is Warped Landscape and Warped and Myriad Landscape. They both do essentially the same thing. So one just comes into play tap, the other one does not. They both tap for a colorless. Ghost Quarter, because I've always said, put some type of land destruction. You never know what you're going to face. Have to put it in there a little bit. And then the rest is mountains. And if you want to know exactly how many, there's a total of 35 lands in here. I think 25 of them are mountains. Either way, I'll have the deck list in the description. You can click on it. It's from MTG Goldfish, and you can go ahead and take a look at all the numbers. As far as ramp goes, really bad color for ramp. There is no actual real ramp, so we're going to go with Mana Rocks. So we got a Soul Ring. Armalayer Sphere, while not actually technically mana ramp, it thins your deck out of bad draws later, so it gets 2 lands out of your library into your hand, so you don't have to worry about drawing them later. Felwar Stone, Mind Stone, Prismatic Lens, and Heraldic Banner. And then we have a creature. This is Burnished Heart. So it's 3 to cast for 2/2. You pay 3 and sacrifice them. You don't have to tap them, which is always good. You can go get 2 basic lands and put them into play tapped. Now, the theme here is try to get the cost down as far as the casting cost. So 1, 2, 2, 2, 2, and then 3. The reason why the Heraldic Banner is because it's a monocolor deck, so all your creatures are most likely going to be red. Except for a couple of the artifact ones, so they'll all get the buff that fits the theme for the red deck wins of the low to the ground, low cost creatures, buffing them up on their power so they can deal more damage. So that's what we got for the ramp section. It's not too not too advanced. It is what it is. It's mono red. Man, is it bad. I mean, as far as I could do, that was the best I could do with what I'm working with as mono red, but it's not green, that's for sure. Creature-wise, so there's a lot here. This is way more than I normally would put in a Purphoros deck. So each one of these is going to create a token somehow, some way, or be a utility for doing so. So we're going to go over the creature token creators first. So Battlecry Goblin, 2/2. He buffs goblins. There are going to be a lot of goblins in here. Not necessarily needed to be goblins, but that's just how it works out because they're the ones that do the most creation of tokens in red. He gives them a buff, a +1/+0, and haste. Now, he has something cool with pack tactics, so whenever Battlecry Goblin attacks, which is what this the customer wanted to be able to just attack, and then get the bonus of Purphoros damage on top of that to cause a lot of chaos and damage. So when you attack, if you attack the creatures with power 6 or greater, you create a 1/1 Goblin creature token that's tapped and attacking. So you'll get a Purphoros trigger, and you'll have 2 attackers with him out, as long as you've got the power up to 6. Carrie Zev, Skyship Raider, First Strike and Menace, it's a 1/3. She creates a token, a 2/1 monkey token. You guys should all know who Ragavan is by now. Creates Ragavan, the 2/1 that's tapped and attacking. Again, another Purphoros trigger. Now, if there's a way to sacrifice the token and be able to get it to happen every turn, or if somebody blocks the Ragavan token, all the better. If not, you still get damage through. Mog War Marshal, this is in my build. Comes into play as 1/1 for 2. He has Echo, so he has self-sacrificing if you need it. He comes into play and leaves the battlefield, creating a 1/1 token. So this guy can create 3 total tokens, or 3 total creatures, so 3 triggers for Purphoros, for 2 mana. Tilinali's Summoner, so 2 to cast, 1/1, with Ascend, so that means that if you have 10 permanents in play, you gain the City's Blessing. You should, in this deck, be able to get the City's Blessing easily. Whenever he attacks, you may pay a red and X, and when you do, or if you do pay that, you create X 1/1 red elemental creature tokens, tapped and attacking. And at the beginning of your end step, you sacrifice those tokens unless you have the City's Blessing. So a lot of token creation there. If you have a lot of lands in play, he attacks no matter what. You can probably get 10 tokens out, creating 20 damage to everybody. Always good time. Annex, the mono red one, which is hardened in the forge, so 3 to cast for a star 1. The star is equal to your devotion to red. I explained devotion to you earlier. Whenever Annex or another non-token creature you control dies, now remember, I have some stuff in here that does die on its own. Whenever it does die, you create a 1/1 red satyr creature token, and that creature can't block, unfortunately, but you're not really blocking in this deck. And if that creature that was killed or died had power 4 or greater, you create 2 tokens instead. So lots of token creation out of this. For some reason, it won't really matter with Purphoros. Purphoros doesn't normally die, per se. He gets exiled. Gut True Soul Zealot. So it's a foil etched because I had to go backwards. I'm not really going to release the videos for my Baldur's Gate pack openings for a little while. I only did it because it was requested that I put a gut in here. And the only one I opened out of an entire box happened to be a foil etched. So it's a 3D cast 2/2 that whenever it attacks, you can sacrifice another creature, or an artifact, and they can be tokens. That's the great part. And then when you do, you create a 4/1 black skeleton creature token with menace that's tapped and attacking. The choose a background doesn't really matter because he's not your commander, so we'll just ignore that. But it creates a 4/1 token with menace. That's, if you haven't noticed, everything here is tapped and attacking creation so far. Here's where the Handwear Garrison comes in. So you saw the top half of the back part of this. So here's the bottom half, and I'll explain. 3D cast for a 2/3 that when he attacks, you create 2 1/1 red human creature tokens that are tapped and attacking as well. The bottom half of this makes it so that when it melds together, and you put the two creatures, the land and this together, when they're in there and you meld them, it becomes a 7/4 trampling haste that when it attacks, you put 2 3/2 colorless Eldrazi horror creature tokens onto the battlefield tapped and attacking. So you can do it either this way, or if you have the land and you meld it together, that's what the ability is called, as you see, meld, with Handwear Battlements. They create 2 tokens every time they attack. So Krenko, 10 Street Captain. So this one is, you put a +1/+1 counter when he attacks, and then you create a number of 1/1 red goblin creature tokens equal to its power. So the first time it attacks, it's a 2/2. Or I'm sorry, 2/3. So it'll attack, put a token on, or a counter on it, and then create tokens equal to its power, which would be 2 at the time. So it'll create 2 tokens, essentially making this a 3-for-1 when you finally get to attack. Obviously, we're going to go into a couple more goblins that are token creators. We got Legion Warboss, has Mentor, which makes other things more powerful. So whenever it attacks, put a +1/+1 counter on target attacking creature with lesser power. So the good thing is if you attack with Legion Warboss and Krenko, you can get the triggers to make it so the Krenko can make 3 tokens. Always good. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you also create a 1/1 red goblin creature token that has haste and attacks this every combat if able. And that's every time it attacks. So it's at the beginning of combat. He doesn't even have to attack. So at the beginning of combat on your turn, you create the token, and then it can attack, and you can leave him back. However, the Mentor makes you not want to. Zurzoth, the Chaos Rider. So a 2/3 for 3. It's the Devil. I like the Devils that are coming out recently. Whenever an opponent draws their first card each turn, and it's not their turn, you create a 1/1 Red Devil, and that Red Devil it deals 1 damage if it dies to anything. And then it also has whenever 1 or more Devils you control attack 1 or more players, you and those players each draw a card and then discard a card at random. So you're forcing people to draw cards and discard, so you're forcing the token creation. So Beetleback Chief will be put into my version of Purphoros. This is one of the more things I was trying to find. I couldn't find it before I did my builds a couple years ago. So when I do the update to my own Purphoros deck, this will go in there. It's a 4-cast 2/2 that creates 2 1/1 red goblin creature tokens when it comes into play. So for 4 mana, you get 3 creatures. That's the theory here, that you're trying to get as many or close to as many, in most cases 1 less creature per time you use mana. So for 4 mana, you'll get 3 out of that. Delina Wild Mage was a request. This was one of the ones I was given as a choice for the commander when he said he wanted to have a commander red deck wins deck. They chose Purphoros and requested that Gut along with Delina were put in here. So it's 4 to cast for a 3/2. When it attacks, you roll a die. On a 1 to 14, you create a tapped and attacking token. That's a copy of, I believe you choose a creature when you roll. Create a tapped and attacking token that's a copy of a creature, except it's not legendary, and then exile it at the end of combat. And then if you roll 15 to 20, you create one of those tokens and then roll again. So here's the cool thing. You're creating a copy of something, and it could be something, say, where is he at? The Beetleback Chief. So now you're creating a token that's a copy, getting the Purphoros trigger, and then when he comes into play, you're creating 2 other things, creating 2 more Purphoros triggers. So Delina is actually going to probably go into my version as well. Goblin Trap Runner, so 4 to cast for a 4/2. When it attacks, you flip 3 coins. For each flip you win, create a 1/1 token that's tapped and attacking. So for 4, you may even possibly get 4 triggers out of it every turn. Obviously, we're going to put Krenko Mob Boss in there. It's in my version as well. It's 4 to cast 3/3. You should know what this is. Most people choose him as the commander for a lot of decks, rather than Purphoros, and put Purphoros in the 99. So you just tap it to create X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens, where X is the number of goblins you control already. He includes himself. You can see where that's going. Scampering Scorcher. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 1/1 red elemental tokens that gain haste until end of turn. So he's a 4 to cast 1/1, but he comes into play with 3 tokens with him. Or I'm sorry, 3 total triggers with him. So 2 for the tokens and 1 for himself. Krenko's Emerald's Hatcher, so 5 to cast for a 3/3. When he enters the battlefield, you create 3 0/1 colorless Eldrazi Scion tokens that can be sacrificed to add a colorless. So the funny thing is he actually has a refund for himself. So he comes into play, he's 5 to cast, he comes into play with 3 tokens, so it's 4 triggers of Purphoros, and then the refund is you can sacrifice the tokens to add mana to your mana pool, paying for 3 of that, so technically he would only cost 2. Siege Gang Commander, so 5 to cast for a 2/2, and then when he enters the battlefield, create 3 tokens. He's a great target for Delina. There are so many triggers with Delina out, and especially if you get the repeat again. So you can possibly get, if you get the 15 to 20 on the roll of Dina, you can create 2 Siege Gang leaders or commanders, creating 6 tokens and 2 more for the Siege Gang commanders, which is 8 triggers for 16 damage off of Purphoros. You can also, for a little bit of fun, this is where your sacrifice comes in. You can actually sacrifice goblins to do 2 more damage to any target. See where there's a lot of damage coming in? Chancellor of Forge, so this one's a little more unique. So you can reveal it at the beginning of the game before anything else is done. And if you do, you create a 1/1 goblin token. Or when he enters the battlefield, put X 1/1 red goblin creature tokens onto the battlefield with haste, where X is the number of creatures you already control. So if you have a board of tokens, he could end the game. So keep that in mind. Mirror Battlesphere, I believe this is in my version. 7 to cast for a 4/7. When he enters, you create 4 1/1 colorless mirror tokens. The other part, only if you're attacking, which is what this deck wants to do, you can actually tap them to create more power from your Battlesphere, if you so choose. And then Pentavis actually has a lot of ability to do infinite stuff. So he comes into play with 5 +1/+1 counters, and then you can pay 1 to remove a counter to create a 1/1, or you can sacrifice that 1/1 by paying 1 and putting the counter back on Pentavis. So you can, if you have enough mana, you can just keep removing counters. Make sure you keep 1 on there because you don't want it to die. So you remove 4 counters, put them back on, remove 4 counters, put them back on, and it's a loop that you can keep doing over and over again to get Purphoros triggers. Some other creatures that we're going to use as utility, Pyromancer, Young Pyromancer, so whenever you cast an instant spell, most of your spells are going to be creating tokens already, so you'll get an extra 1 out of that. Witty Roastmaster, so whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it's a 1 damage Purphoros trigger, so now if you have Purphoros plus Witty Roastmaster out, it's 3 damage per thing that comes into play. Grinning Ingus, now there's a infinite combo you can do for infinite mana with or infinite enter the battlefield triggers and leaves the battlefield triggers with Grinning Ingus. It's not in this deck, but if you wanted to add it, you could. It's one of the gods. I can't remember. It's the red god that was recently put out. I'll have it up here so you can see because I can't remember off the top of my head. He's in here to be the first half, so if you want to add that, you can. If not, he's in here so you can have enters and leaves the battlefield triggers for almost free. I mean, he replenishes his own cost by giving you 1 red and 2 of any, and he costs an extra red to bring them back. So not bad for a lot of triggers. And then Goblin Matron lets you go get any goblin that you're looking for and put it in your hand. It's a tutor for a goblin. Most likely you're going to go get either Krenko or Siege Gang Leader or whatever you need at the time, okay? As far as spells go, we're going to go over the token creation stuff. We got Forbidden Friendship, Dragon Fodder, Krenko's Command. They all are 2 to cast and give you 2. Tokens, Stature Revolts, a 3 to cast gives you 3. Tokens, you see a pair of goblins, it's 3 to cast gives you 2. Hordeling Outburst, 3 to cast, it gives you 3. See where I'm going with this? Molten Birth is a reusable one, so you cost 3 and puts 2 into play, but you can possibly, with a coin flip, get it back to your hand. Font of Rage, another 3 to cast, gives you 2 tokens. It can be a free to cast if you do it on somebody else's turn. Goblin Offensive is an X cast, so it's 3 plus X, and create X tokens. Goblin War Party also creates 3 tokens. And then if you wanted to, you can also instead choose creatures you control get +1/+1 and haste until the turn, or entwine it and get both. And then Skittering Invasion is the final one. So it's a 7 to cast. You get 5 01 Eldrazi tokens, and you can refund 5 of that back to you. So for 2, you can get 5 tokens. So lots and lots and lots of triggers. Let's see what we got here. All the burn that they wanted in there. So the question that I had for them was, do you want burn that does it to any, burn that does it to just player, burn that does it to just creatures? We came along this conclusion that it's probably best to do whatever can hit both. So we start off with Burst Lightning. It's 2 or 4, depending on how much mana you have, and you have a lot of stuff in here you can sack to add colorless mana, so not a bad thing. Lightning Bolt obviously is the most, cost-effective burn spell in red. Shock, same thing, not the most, but it's pretty efficient. Wild Slash in here, so it does 2 damage to any target, and if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, damage can't be prevented that turn. Purphoros' power is 6, so you should be covered there. Incinerate does 3, Lightning Strike does 3, Magma Jet does 2, but you get to scry 2, so you can fix your draws. Searing Spear does 3. Abrade has a choice. You can do 3 damage to a creature or destroy an artifact. This is one of those multi-use cards I like to add into a lot of decks so that they are not just one-trick ponies. And same thing with Cathartic Pyre. It does 3 damage to a creature or planeswalker, clearing the field, or you can discard up to 2 cards and draw that many cards. So if you have dead land draws in your hand, if you don't need the land, you can discard them to draw 2 new cards. And we're going to segue that into card draw as well. So we got Faithless Looting, discard 2, or draw 2 cards, discard 2. With flashback, so you can use it twice. Throw of Possibility, discard a card to draw 2. Instant Speed version, Sorcerer Speed version, discard a card to draw 2. And Wild Guess, same thing, Sorcery Speed, discard a card to draw 2. So 4 cards plus the one that I had in the other section, so it's 5 card draws, so it's about 10 cards you can draw. less on the defense than my deck is. We're going to go with Vandal Blast and Chaos Warp. Vandal Blast destroys all artifacts your opponents control if you overload it, and then Chaos Warp can get rid of anything that's kind of bothering you on the board. Shuffle it into the library, and then I think it's Manifest. No, it's not really Manifest. Put a permanent they put on the battlefield. So if they don't, if the top card of the library isn't a permanent, they don't get to put it on the battlefield, by the way. All right, some more utility. We're going to go with Cavalcade of Calamity and Impact Tremors. Cavalcade says whenever a creature you control with power 1 or less attacks, Cavalcade deals 1 damage to that player or planeswalker that it's attacking. A lot of the creatures in here are 1/1 tokens, so even if they don't live through it or they get blocked, they still deal the damage anyway. And then Impact Tremors, whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals the damage. So again, like Witty Roastmaster, it's half of Purphoros' ability. Always good, especially in this deck. In my version, I have it. It's great. Now, I'm going to go over 2 cards. These were questioned as why I would put these in the deck, and I want to explain these real well. I have a Blood Moon and a Mind's Eye. Blood Moon, because you're mono red, and most... No, I don't want to say most. I'll say a lot of decks you're going to face are going to be at least 2 or more colors. That requires non-basic lands to fix mana. This takes care of that because not a lot of people play red. Let's just get that out of the way right now. We know that. Red and white are the weakest colors. We can, even the board, or even the playing field, with Blood Moon, because in all those non-basics that they're using for color fixing, they only tap to add red. They lose all their abilities, and they only tap to add red, which are going to basically just become colorless for most people. It evens the playing field if you get it out early so that they can't fix mana. And in some cases, some people don't even have basics in their deck. So that really destroys them. So that's the reason for Blood Moon. Any mono red deck should be playing that. Mind's Eye, because red's main weakness is drawing cards in abundance without having a downfall. Mind's Eye lets it so that you can, whenever an opponent draws a card, you may pay 1 and draw a card. Remember, I have in here, I think it was Zerzoth that does it. Whenever you attack with the devil, whoever you're attacking draws a card, you get to pay the 1 and draw a card as well. So that's in there to help shore up weaknesses in red's repertoire, which is that. And finally, the last thing we got is a couple of Planeswalkers. Nothing too important, nothing too big. We got Tibalt, because the opponents can't gain life so that they can't, like, race you in the damage that's coming in, and he creates devil tokens. When they die, they also deal damage to any target. Jaya, Venerated Fire Mage, so whenever red source, most of the damage you're going to have is going to be a red source. When they deal damage to a permanent player, it deals that much +1 to that permanent player instead, so now Purphoros is dealing 3 damage per trigger, and then he himself, you can down tick it to deal 2 damage, which then gets the bonus of +1 damage. Chandra Flamecaller, so not the best Chandra, but it creates 2 tokens on the uptick. That's all you really need. And then also, in case of Emergency Break Glass, you can discard the cards in your hand and draw that many cards +1. So if you have a lot of bad stuff in your hand that's not helping you, you can discard your hand for 0 and draw that +1. Or it deals X damage to each creature, so if you need a board wipe, it counts as that as well. So that's the deck in a nutshell. Came out to a little over $100, but I'm okay with that. I don't have to worry about that too much. That's what I got for you. That's what I built for this customer. I'm going to be updating my Purphoros deck hopefully very soon, so I'll have a little bit different take on that. I'm not doing a red deck win so much as I'm just trying to burn people out with Purphoros. So 2 different ways to play the same commander. Very similar, but a little different. If you have any questions or concerns, comments, or anything like that, go ahead and shoot me an email if you want. It's bluebearsgames@gmail.com. Go to the Facebook page if you have anything that you want to talk about in public. You can go ahead and put it there. It's Bluebears Games on Facebook, or you can put a message or a comment in the section below, and we can go over anything you want to go over. I'm not shy. Don't be shy yourself. Please go ahead and do so. Other than that, I'm going to actually just start getting this packed up and shipped out, because once this video is done, this deck is gone. I don't have it. Something I should address. This is my personal Purphoros for my Purphoros deck, but if you've been watching my channel for a while now, you'll know that I got the Stargazing Secret Lair, so I have the special edition version of Purphoros. This is a better picture because it's more clear. However, that's a cooler looking version of Purphoros for the Stargazing Secret Lair. So when I update it, you'll see that that's the big difference that I have as far as an upgrade to a card I already own. So as much as I wanted to use this for another deck, this is out of here as of today. I'm going to have it shipped out, so hopefully he gets it before the video even comes out. Other than that, that is my time for the week. Do me the favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel if you have not done so already, and, if you're feeling cheeky, go ahead and share this out to somebody who's looking to build a Purphoros deck. They are fun. And with that, I'm out. Have a good one. I'll see you all next week.